Kang Dae-sun stood at the observation window of Orbital Station Harmony and watched as space itself seemed to tear open. One moment there was nothing but stars. The next moment, there were ships. Massive vessels, dark and ancient, each one larger than the station itself. They hung in the void like sleeping giants, and Dae-sun felt his heart grow cold. The Torani had arrived. Behind him, the command center erupted into controlled chaos. Officers ran to their stations. Screens flickered with data. Commander Kim Tae-hyun's voice cut through the noise, calm and steady, giving orders that everyone followed without question. But Dae-sun could see the fear in their eyes. They all knew what the Torani were. They all knew what this visit meant. Dae-sun had spent 3 years as a diplomatic attaché on this station. He had helped negotiate treaties with 17 different species. He had seen first contact situations go wrong, and he had seen them go right. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. The Torani were not like other species. They did not come to trade or to talk. They came to judge. And their judgments always ended the same way. He turned away from the window and walked toward the briefing room. The halls were crowded with people moving quickly, their faces tight with worry. Some of them nodded to him as he passed. Others did not seem to see him at all. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Would humanity survive the next 3 days? The briefing room was already full when he arrived. Commander Kim stood at the front, his hands clasped behind his back. Around him sat the senior staff, Han Jae-won, the security chief, a big man with careful eyes, Choi Yun-bi, the communications officer, young but brilliant, and Park Yun-hee, the xenobiologist and cultural liaison. Dae-sun took his seat and looked at Yun-hee. She sat quietly, her hands folded on the table, her face calm. She was always calm. In the 2 years he had known her, he had never seen her panic or lose control. She studied alien cultures the way some people studied art, with patience and deep attention. Other species trusted her. They opened up to her in ways they did not open up to anyone else. He wondered if that would be enough. "Listen carefully," Commander Kim said. "I will only say this once. The Torani have judged 7 civilizations in the past 1,000 years. All 7 were found unworthy. All 7 were destroyed. We have 3 days to convince them that humanity deserves to exist." No one spoke. The weight of those words pressed down on all of them. "We know what they value," Kim continued. "Strength, technology, genetic potential. We will show them our best in all these areas. Han Jae-won will lead the military demonstration. Choi Eun-bi will present our technological achievements. Park Yun-hee will provide cultural context and serve as our primary liaison." Dae-sun watched Yun-hee nod once, accepting the responsibility without complaint. She would carry the heaviest burden. If things went wrong, she would be the one facing the Torani directly. "What about their history?" Jae-won asked. "Do we know why they destroyed those civilizations?" Kim's expression darkened. "The records are incomplete. The Torani do not explain their judgments. They simply act. But from what we have gathered, the species they destroyed were not weak. They were not primitive. Some of them were older than humanity and more advanced. The Torani found them lacking in some other way." "What way?" Yun-bi asked. "Unknown." The room fell silent again. Dae-sun felt the fear spreading through the group like cold water. If advanced civilizations had failed, what chance did humanity have? "We cannot think like that," Yun-hee said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "If we go into this believing we will fail, she said. "We need to understand what the Torani are really looking for. Not just what they say they want, but what they actually need." "And how do we figure that out in 3 days?" Jae-won asked. "We watch them," Yun-hee said. "We listen. We pay attention to what they react to and what they ignore. Every species reveals itself if you know how to look. Commander Kim nodded slowly. Do what you need to do, Yun-hee. You have full authority to approach them as you see fit. Thank you, Commander. The meeting ended and everyone moved to their tasks. Dae-sun lingered, watching Yun-hee gather her things. She moved without hurry, her mind clearly working through something. He wanted to say something to her, something encouraging, but the words would not come. What could he say that would matter? She looked up and caught him watching her. For a moment, their eyes met. You should get some rest, she said. The next few days will be difficult. I could say the same to you. She smiled slightly. I will, after I review the Tarani cultural files one more time. He nodded and left her there, knowing she would study those files until her eyes burned. That was who she was. She would give everything she had to this task, and she would not stop until it was done or until she had nothing left to give. 3 hours later, the Tarani delegation came aboard. Dae-sun stood with the welcoming party in the main docking bay, his hands steady at his sides. The airlock opened, and the Tarani emerged. They were tall, nearly 3 meters, with skin like polished stone and eyes that held no warmth. They moved with slow precision, every step deliberate, every gesture controlled. At their head walked Ambassador Velik, the oldest and most powerful of them. His presence filled the room like a physical weight. Dae-sun found it hard to breathe. Velik surveyed the humans before him. His gaze moved from face to face, cold and measuring. When his eyes reached Yun-hee, they paused for just a moment. Then they moved on. Humanity, Velik said. His voice was deep and hollow, like wind through ancient caves. You have called yourselves ready to be judged. We shall see if that is true. Commander Kim stepped forward. Ambassador Velik, we welcome you to Orbital Station Harmony. We are honored by your presence. Honor is earned, Velik said. Not given. He turned to address the full assembly. You have 3 days. In that time, we will examine your species, your strength, your knowledge, your worth. At the end of those 3 days, we will deliver our judgment. He paused, and something that might have been satisfaction crossed his stone-carved face. In 10,000 years, we have never found a younger race worthy of survival. You will likely be no different. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Dae-sun looked at Yun-hee. She stood perfectly still, her eyes fixed on Velik. She was not afraid, he realized. She was thinking, and in that moment, he felt the smallest spark of hope. Han Jae-won led a squad of soldiers into the demonstration arena, their movements sharp and practiced. They carried the best weapons humanity had to offer. They wore armor that could stop plasma fire. They moved like one body, one mind, and Dae-sun felt pride watching them. The Tarani watched from above, seated in a viewing platform that overlooked the arena. Ambassador Velik sat in the center, his stone face revealing nothing. Beside him was High Emissary Kale, younger than Velik but no less cold. And at the end of the row sat a smaller Tarani, one Dae-sun had not noticed before. This one was leaner, with eyes that moved constantly, taking in everything. The demonstration began. The soldiers performed perfectly. They ran combat drills that would have impressed any military commander in the galaxy. They fired their weapons with deadly accuracy. They showed strength, speed, discipline, and skill. By any normal measure, they were magnificent. The Tarani did not react. When the demonstration ended, Velik rose from his seat. He looked down at the soldiers for a long moment. Then he spoke. Adequate. That was all. One word. Then he turned and left the arena. Jae-won's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The soldiers filed out in silence. Dae-sun could see the disappointment in their faces. They had given their best, and their best had been called adequate. The second test came an hour later. Choi Yun-bi led the technological presentation. She showed the Tarani humanity's greatest achievements: faster-than-light engines, quantum computing systems, medical technology that could rebuild damaged organs, environmental systems that could make dead worlds bloom with life. She spoke with confidence and clarity, her pride in human innovation clear in every word. The Tarani watched. They asked no questions. They showed no interest. When Eunbi finished, Kyle leaned forward and spoke for the first time. "Your technology is young," he said. "Unrefined. There is nothing here we have not seen 1,000 times before." Yunbi's face reddened, but she held her composure. "We are a young species," she said. "But we learn quickly." "All young species say that," Kale replied. "Few of them are correct." He sat back, dismissing her with his silence. Dae-sun watched from the back of the room, his hope fading with each passing moment. The Tarani were not impressed by strength. They were not impressed by technology. What did they want? What were they looking for? He found Yun-hee in the observation lounge after the presentations ended. She stood at the window, looking out at the Tarani ships. Her face was troubled. "It is not going well," Dae-sun said. "No," she agreed. "It is not. What do you think they want?" She did not answer right away. She continued to stare at the ships, her mind working through something he could not see. "I have been watching them," she said finally. "The ambassador, the emissary, all of them. They look at everything we show them, but they do not really see it. It is like they are waiting for something else." "What?" "I do not know yet." She turned to face him. "But I noticed something during the presentations, the small one at the end of the row. Did you see her?" Dae-sun nodded. "I noticed her. She seemed different from the others. She is called Observer Mira. She is young, for a Tarani, and she watches us differently than the others do. They look at us like we are specimens. She looks at us like she is trying to understand something." "Understand what?" Yun-hee's eyes grew distant. "I think she is trying to understand us, not our technology or our strength. Us, who we are, what makes us what we are." Dae-sun considered this. "You think she might be the key?" "I think she might be a door," Yun-hee said. "A door that the others have closed." Before Dae-sun could respond, the door to the observation lounge opened. Kyle entered, his presence filling the room with cold authority. Behind him came 2 Tarani guards. "Park Yun-hee," Kyle said. "Ambassador Velik wishes to speak with you." Yun-hee showed no fear. "Of course, I will come immediately." She walked toward Kyle, but Dae-sun stepped forward. "I will accompany her," he said. Kyle's eyes moved to him, cold and uninterested. "You were not summoned." "She is our cultural liaison. Protocol requires that she not meet with foreign dignitaries alone." It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Kyle seemed uninterested in arguing. He turned and walked away, and Yun-hee followed. Dae-sun fell into step beside her. They were led to the Tarani section of the station, an area that had been sealed off for the delegation's use. The air felt different there, colder, heavier. The walls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Dae-sun felt like he was walking into a tomb. Ambassador Velik waited in a large chamber, seated on a raised platform, his eyes fixed on Yun-hee as she entered. "You study alien cultures?" he said. It was not a question. "Yes," Yun-hee said. "You try to understand them, to find meaning in their ways." "Yes." Velik leaned forward slightly. "Then tell me, Park Yun-hee, what do you see when you look at the Tarani?" The question hung in the air. Dae-sun held his breath. Yun-hee did not hesitate. "I see a species in pain," she said. The silence that followed was absolute. Kyle's expression shifted to anger. The guards tensed, but Velik remained still, his eyes locked on Yun-hee's face. "Explain," he said. You have lived for 10,000 years, Yunhee said. You have judged countless species and found them all unworthy, but you keep searching. You keep looking. If you truly believed that no species could meet your standards, you would have stopped long ago. You would have given up, but you have not. That tells me you are searching for something you need, something you lost. Valak said nothing. And that search, Yunhee continued, that endless search with no reward, that is pain. The chamber was silent. Dae-sun could feel his heart pounding in his chest. Yunhee had just told an ancient and powerful being that his entire species was suffering. It was either the bravest or the most foolish thing he had ever witnessed. Valak rose from his seat. He descended the platform and stopped directly in front of Yunhee. He was nearly twice her height, his presence overwhelming. She did not step back. She did not look away. You are perceptive, Valak said quietly. Perhaps too perceptive. He turned and walked toward the door. The judgment continues tomorrow. We will see if your perception can save your species. He left the chamber. Kyle followed, but not before giving Yunhee a look of pure hatred. Dae-sun exhaled slowly. That was dangerous. It was necessary, Yunhee said. You made them angry. I made them think. She looked at him, and he saw something in her eyes. Not fear, but determination. That is a start. They walked back to the human section in silence. When they reached Yunhee's quarters, she stopped at the door. Thank you for coming with me, she said. I was not going to let you face them alone. She smiled slightly. Get some rest, Dae-sun. Tomorrow will be harder. She went inside and he stood there for a moment, thinking about what she had said to Valak. A species in pain. A search for something lost. He did not know if she was right, but he knew one thing for certain. She was the only one who had made the Tarani pause. It was early morning, the second day of judgment. Most of the station was still asleep, but Yunhee had been awake for hours, thinking about what she had said to Valak and what she had seen in his eyes. There had been a reaction there hidden beneath the stone face, a flicker of something. Recognition, perhaps, or fear. She needed to understand more. She had learned that Mira walked the observation corridors each morning, studying the stars. It was an unusual behavior for a Tarani. The others stayed in their sealed section, emerging only for official functions. But Mira wandered. She looked. She wondered. Yunhee found her at the far end of Corridor 7, standing before a window that showed a distant nebula. The young Tarani did not turn when Yunhee approached. She simply stood there, her eyes fixed on the swirling colors. It is beautiful, Yunhee said. Mira's head moved slightly. It is gas and dust, nothing more. Is that what you see? Mira was quiet for a moment. Then she turned and looked at Yunhee. Her eyes were different from Valak's and Kale's, not cold, but empty, like windows into a room where nothing lived. What do you want, human? To understand you. There is nothing to understand. We are Tarani, we judge. That is all. Yunhee stepped closer to the window, standing beside Mira. She was careful to keep her posture open, non-threatening. This was like approaching a wounded animal. One wrong move and the chance would be lost. May I ask you something? Yunhee said. You may ask. I may not answer. Why do you walk these corridors alone? Mira's expression shifted slightly, confusion perhaps, or surprise. I do not know. I find myself drawn to them, to the views, to the silence. The others do not come here. The others have no interest in such things. But you do. Mira turned away from her, back to the window. I am young. I have not yet learned to be as they are. Yunhee heard something in those words. Not pride in the elders, not admiration, something else. Something that sounded almost like regret. Can I tell you something about humans? Yun-hee asked. If you wish. We believe that beauty matters. That looking at a nebula and feeling something, wonder, joy, peace, that feeling matters. It connects us to the universe. It reminds us that we are part of something larger than ourselves. Mira was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was lower than before. The Tarani do not feel. Never. Not for 10,000 years. The words hit Yun-hee like a physical blow. She had suspected something like this, but hearing it confirmed was different. 10,000 years without feeling. 10,000 years of emptiness. What happened? She asked gently. Mira hesitated. Yun-hee could see her struggling with something, the desire to speak against the training to remain silent. Finally, the desire won. We removed it. Removed it? Emotion, feeling, compassion. We believed they made us weak. We believed that to become perfect, we had to become pure. Pure logic, pure judgment, pure will. Mira's hands tightened at her sides. So we developed a process. We applied it to ourselves, generation after generation. We cut away everything soft, everything warm. We became what we are now. Yun-hee felt sick. You did this to yourselves? We thought it would make us strong. We thought it would make us gods. Mira turned to face her, and for the first time, Yun-hee saw something in those empty eyes. A crack, a wound. We were wrong. What do you mean? We became hollow, incomplete. We achieved perfection, but perfection was empty. So we began to search for what we had lost. We looked for it in other species. We hoped that somewhere in the galaxy, we would find beings who had what we destroyed. Beings who could remind us what it was like to feel. Yun-hee understood now. The judgments, the destruction. It all made terrible sense. But you never found it, she said. We found it many times, in the Velanthi, in the Korath, in the Sundari. Mira's voice grew harder. And each time we found it, we destroyed them. Why? Because they reminded us of what we could never have again. Because their feelings were like mirrors, showing us our own emptiness. We could not bear it, so we broke the mirrors. Yun-hee stood in silence, processing what she had heard. The Torani were not judges. They were not gods. They were wounded beings, lashing out at anything that showed them their own pain. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Mira looked at her, and for just a moment, the emptiness in her eyes wavered. Because you spoke to Velik about pain. No one has ever done that. No one has ever seen us, and I... She stopped. I do not know why. I should not be telling you anything. But when I look at you, I feel something I do not understand. Something that makes me want to speak. Yun-hee reached out and placed her hand on Mira's arm. The Tarani flinched but did not pull away. That feeling, Yun-hee said softly, is connection. It is what happens when one being truly sees another. You feel it because I am not looking at you as a judge or an enemy. I am looking at you as a person. Mira stared at her hand. I do not understand. You do not need to understand it yet. You only need to let yourself feel it. The moment stretched between them, fragile and new. Then footsteps echoed in the corridor. Kale appeared at the far end of the hall. His eyes found them immediately, and his expression twisted with anger. Observer Mira, he said coldly. You were instructed to remain in the delegation quarters. Mira stepped back from Yun-hee, her face closing off. I was merely observing the station. You were speaking with the human. She approached me. Enough. Kyle strode toward them, his presence filling the corridor. He stopped in front of Yun-hee, looking down at her with open contempt. You think you are clever, human. You think you can manipulate us with soft words and gentle touches. You are wrong. Yun-hee met his gaze without flinching. I was not manipulating anyone. I was talking to her. You were contaminating her, filling her head with human weakness. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. If you speak to her again, I will recommend that Velik end this judgment early, and I promise you, the ending will not be in your favor. He turned and grabbed Mira's arm, pulling her away. Mira went without resistance, but as she passed Yunhee, their eyes met, and in that brief look, Yunhee saw something she had not seen before. Hope. It was small, it was fragile, but it was there. Kyle led Mira away, and Yunhee stood alone in the corridor. Her heart was racing, her hands were trembling. She had taken a terrible risk, and she did not know if it would save humanity or doom them faster. But she knew one thing. She had reached Mira. She had planted a seed. Now she had to find a way to make it grow. She walked back to the human section, her mind working through possibilities. She needed to talk to Commander Kim. She needed to explain what she had learned. The Tyranni were not looking for strength or technology. They were looking for something they had destroyed in themselves. They were looking for feeling, and humanity had it. Humanity had always had it. The question was whether the Tyranni would accept it as a gift, or destroy it like they had destroyed everything else that reminded them of what they had lost. Yunhee did not have an answer, but she knew she had to try. For Mira, for humanity, for the small, fragile thing that had flickered to life in an ancient being's empty eyes. She had to try. The summons came within the hour. Yunhee was in Commander Kim's office, explaining what she had learned from Mira, when Choi Yunbi burst through the door. Ambassador Velik has called a full assembly, Yunbi said. Immediately, all senior staff. Kim rose from his desk. What happened? Kale reported to him. He says Yunhee interfered with a member of the delegation. Yunbi's face was pale. The ambassador is not happy. Yunhee felt a cold knot form in her stomach, but she kept her expression calm. Then we should not keep him waiting. They gathered in the main assembly hall, Kim, Jaewon, Yunbi, Dae-sun, and the other senior officers. The Tyranni delegation was already there, arranged on their raised platform like statues of ancient kings. Velik sat in the center, his stone face darker than before. Kale stood at his right hand, radiating satisfaction, and at the far end, almost hidden behind the others, Mira sat with her head bowed. Yunhee was led to the center of the room, alone. She stood before the Tyranni with her hands at her sides, waiting. Park Yunhee, Velik said. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder in a canyon. High Emissary Kyle has informed me that you approached Observer Mira without permission, that you spoke to her of things that are forbidden, that you attempted to influence her against her own people. Yunhee felt every eye in the room on her, human and Tyranni alike. I spoke to her, Yunhee said. That is true. But I did not attempt to influence her against anyone. I simply talked to her. I listened to her. I treated her as I would treat any being who seemed alone and searching. Kyle stepped forward. She filled Mira's head with human ideas, emotions, weaknesses. She tried to use our observer as a tool against us. I was not using her, Yunhee said, her voice firm. I was seeing her. There is a difference. Kale's face twisted with contempt. You think your words are clever, human, but you do not understand what you have done. Mira is young. She has not completed her purification. She is vulnerable to contamination, and you exploited that vulnerability. I did not exploit anything. I saw a being in pain, and I responded with kindness. That is not contamination. That is compassion. The word hung in the air. Compassion. Yunhee saw Velik react to it, a slight shift in his posture, a tightening around his eyes. She had touched something. Compassion. Kale repeated, making the word sound like a curse. The weakness that has destroyed 1,000 species. The disease that makes beings soft and blind. You offer this to us as if it were a gift? It is a gift, Yunhee said. The greatest one we have. Kale turned to Velik. Ambassador, I recommend we end this judgment now. These humans are not worthy of consideration. They are infected with the same sickness as all the others. Let us finish this and move on. Yunhee's heart pounded, but she did not look away from Velik. Everything depended on the next few moments. Everything depended on what he decided. Velik was silent for a long time. He looked at Kyle. He looked at Yunhee. His ancient eyes seemed to see through everything, down to the core of what was true. Then he spoke. No. Kyle blinked. Ambassador? I said no. Velik rose from his seat and descended the platform. He walked toward Yunhee, his steps slow and heavy. The hall was completely silent. No one moved. No one breathed. He stopped in front of her. Up close. He was even more terrifying, vast and ancient and powerful beyond anything she had ever known. But she did not step back. She held her ground. You spoke of pain, he said quietly, so only she could hear. You said we are searching for something we lost. You believe you understand us. I believe I am beginning to understand, Yunhee said. Then understand this. His voice dropped even lower. For 10,000 years we have searched. For 10,000 years we have found species with what we lost, and we have destroyed them all, not because we are cruel, because we cannot bear to see what we can never have again. Do you understand? Yunhee felt the weight of his words pressing down on her. 10,000 years of grief, 10,000 years of rage turned inward, turned outward, turned everywhere except toward healing. I understand, she said. Then you understand that your compassion may be your death sentence. The more you show us what we have lost, the more we may hate you for it. Perhaps, Yunhee said. Or perhaps you will finally let yourselves feel something other than hate. Velik stared at her. For a moment, just a moment, she thought she saw something flicker in those ancient eyes, something alive, something wounded. Then it was gone. He turned away from her and addressed the assembly. There will be a new test. Kyle stepped forward. Ambassador. Silence. Velik's voice cut through the air like a blade. I have decided. There will be a new test. One that has never been given before. He looked at Yunhee. You believe that compassion is a gift. You believe it can heal. Very well. Prove it. He raised his voice so everyone could hear. You will have 3 days. In that time, you must make one Tyranny feel genuine emotion. Not thoughts, not judgments. True feeling. If you succeed, humanity will be spared. If you fail... He did not need to finish the sentence. Yunhee felt the world tilt beneath her feet. One Tyranny. 3 days. An impossible task with the fate of humanity hanging on it. From the back of the room, Daysun stepped forward. This is not a fair test. The Tyranny have spent 10,000 years removing their ability to feel. How can one human undo that in 3 days? Velik looked at him with cold indifference. She claims compassion is the greatest gift. Let her prove it, or let humanity fall. He turned to his delegation. We are finished here. The Tyranny left the hall in silence. Kale shot Yunhee a look of triumph as he passed. He believed she would fail. He wanted her to fail. When they were gone, Commander Kim approached her. Yunhee, he said, this is not your burden to carry alone. We can find another way. She shook her head. There is no other way. This is the test. I have to take it. But how? How can you make a Tyranny feel when they have destroyed their own emotions? Yunhee looked toward the door where the delegation had exited. She thought of Mira, sitting at the end of the row with her head bowed. She thought of the flicker of hope she had seen in those empty eyes. They did not destroy everything, she said. There is still something left, buried deep, but still there. I saw it in Mira. And you think you can reach it? Yunhee was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at Kim, and her eyes were steady. I have to try. She walked out of the hall, her mind already racing through possibilities. 3 days, 1 tyranny, the fate of every human being alive. Dae-sun caught up with her in the corridor. Yunhee. She stopped and turned to face him. You are not alone in this, he said. Whatever you need, I will help you. She looked at him, this quiet man who had stood by her, who had followed her into the tyranny's chamber, who had spoken up even when it was dangerous. Thank you, she said. I may need your help more than you know. He nodded. Then you will have it. She turned and walked away toward the observation lounge, toward the window where she had first spoken to Mira. The test had begun. She made the request formally through Commander Kim, with all proper diplomatic channels observed. She expected Velik to refuse. She expected Kyle to rage against it, but Velik agreed without argument. Perhaps he wanted to see what she would do. Perhaps he believed she would fail no matter who she worked with. Either way, Mira was brought to the human section of the station, and for 3 days she was in Yunhee's care. The first day was difficult. Mira sat in Yunhee's quarters like a statue, her hands folded in her lap, her face empty. She answered questions with single words. She showed no interest in anything Yunhee offered to show her. She was there in body, but everything else was locked away behind walls built over 10,000 years. Yunhee did not push. She simply stayed with Mira, talking quietly about small things. She told her about Earth, the oceans, the mountains, the forests. She described the feeling of rain on skin and sunlight on face. She talked about her family, her childhood, the people she loved. Mira listened, but said nothing. By evening, Yunhee felt the weight of failure pressing down on her. 1 day gone, and she had made no progress. Dae-sun found her in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. How is it going? He asked. It is not. He stood beside her, saying nothing. His presence was a comfort, even in silence. She is so closed off, Yunhee said, like a door that has been sealed for so long that it has forgotten how to open. Can you find another way in? Yunhee thought about this. She thought about what she knew of Mira, the morning walks, the interest in the nebula, the questions that seemed to come from a place deeper than logic. Maybe I am approaching this wrong, she said slowly. I have been trying to tell her about feelings, but telling is not the same as showing. What do you mean? Tomorrow I will not tell her what emotions are. I will show her. The second day, Yunhee brought music. She found an old recording of a symphony, something from Earth's past, that had moved her since she was a child. She played it for Mira without explanation, without preparation. She simply let the music fill the room. At first, Mira sat motionless, her expression unchanged. But as the music swelled, as the strings rose and fell, as the melody grew from sorrow to hope, something shifted. Her hands tightened in her lap. Her head tilted slightly. Her breathing changed. What is this? Mira asked. It is called music, Yunhee said. It is how humans express feelings that words cannot capture. It is strange. How does it make you feel? Mira was quiet for a long time. The music played on, building toward its final movement. I do not know, she said finally, but something is happening. Something inside me. I do not understand it. It was a small step, but it was a step. The second day continued with more music, then with stories. Yunhee read to Mira from human literature, tales of love and loss, courage and sacrifice, hope and despair. She chose stories that carried emotion in every word, that made you feel even when you did not want to. Mira listened, and slowly, almost invisibly, the walls began to crack. That night, Mira spoke without being asked. Why do humans feel so much? She said. It seems painful. It seems dangerous. It is both of those things, Yunhee agreed, but it is also what makes us alive. Without feeling, life is just existence. With feeling, it becomes meaning. Mira considered this. The Tarani chose existence over meaning. We thought it was the better path. And what do you think now? Mira did not answer. But her silence was different than before. It was not the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of thought. The third day was the last. Yunhee woke early, her stomach tight with fear. She had made progress with Mira, but progress was not enough. She needed a breakthrough. She needed Mira to feel, truly feel, in a way that could not be denied. She found Mira already awake, standing at the window of her quarters. The young Tarani was looking at Earth, the distant blue sphere that hung in the void like a jewel. "It is beautiful," Mira said. "Yes. Billions of your people live there, billions of beings who feel, who love, who suffer, who hope." Mira's voice was strange, rougher than before, less controlled. "And they are all going to die if I do not feel something in the next few hours." Yunhee moved to stand beside her. "Do not think about that. Do not think about the judgment or the test or what happens if you fail. Just think about this moment. Think about what you have experienced in the past 3 days." "I have experienced confusion, discomfort, something pressing inside me that wants to get out." "That is feeling," Yunhee said gently. "That is what it is like when emotions wake up after being asleep for a long time." Mira turned to face her. Her eyes were different now. Not empty, but turbulent. Like water that had been still for too long, finally beginning to move. "I am afraid," Mira said. "I am afraid of what is happening to me. I am afraid that if I let myself feel, I will never be able to stop." Yunhee reached out and took Mira's hands in her own. The Tarani's skin was cool and smooth, like polished stone, but beneath it Yunhee could feel a tremor. "You do not have to be afraid," Yunhee said. "Feeling is not something that destroys you. It is something that makes you whole. It is how you connect to other beings, how you understand them, how you love them. It is painful sometimes, yes, but it is also the most beautiful thing in the universe." Mira stared at her. The tremor grew stronger. "Why are you doing this?" Mira asked. "Why are you working so hard to help me? I am Tarani. My people have destroyed civilizations." "We may destroy yours." Yunhee smiled. "Because I see you. Not the Tarani, not the judge, you. And I believe there is something good in you that deserves to wake up." Mira's breath caught. Her hands tightened around Yunhee's. "I do not understand," she whispered. "I do not understand why you care about me." "That is what compassion is," Yunhee said. "Caring about someone not because you have to, but because you choose to. Because you see their pain and you want to help." Mira's face contorted. Something was breaking inside her, something ancient and deep that had been locked away for 10,000 years. Yunhee could see it happening, could feel it in the grip of Mira's hands. But then the door opened. Kyle entered, flanked by guards. His expression was cold and triumphant. "The test period has ended," he said. "Observer Mira will return to the delegation. The judgment will be delivered within the hour." He crossed the room and took Mira's arm, pulling her away from Yunhee. Mira went without resistance, but her eyes stayed fixed on Yunhee's face. They were full of something: fear, confusion, longing, and something else, something that looked almost like tears. Yunhee stood alone in the empty room, her heart pounding. She had come so close, she had almost reached her. But almost was not enough. The hour passed like a death sentence counting down. Daesun found Yunhee in her quarters, sitting in silence. "It is time," he said. She nodded and rose. Her body felt heavy, her mind numb. She had tried everything she knew. She had given everything she had. And she did not know if it was enough. They walked together toward the judgment chamber, and Yunhee prepared herself for whatever was to come. Every human on the station had gathered to hear the verdict. They stood in rows, their faces tight with fear, their hands clasped together or pressed against their sides. Commander Kim was at the front, his jaw set. Han Jae-won stood beside him, his massive frame rigid with tension. Choi Yun-bi was pale, her eyes red from crying. The Tarani delegation occupied their raised platform, arranged in perfect order. Kyle stood at Velik's right hand, his face satisfied. The other Tarani were motionless, like statues carved from living stone. And at the end of the row, sitting apart from the others, was Mira. Yunhee saw her the moment she entered the chamber. Mira's head was bowed, her hands clasped in her lap. She looked smaller than before, diminished. Whatever had been waking up inside her over the past 3 days seemed to have retreated, pushed back down by Kale's intervention and the weight of her people's expectations. Yunhee felt her heart sink. She was led to the center of the room, to the same spot where she had stood when Kyle accused her of contamination. Dae-sun stayed at the edge of the crowd, but his eyes never left her. She drew strength from his presence. Ambassador Velik rose. The chamber fell completely silent. "Humanity," Velik said, his voice filling the room like the tolling of a great bell. "3 days ago, I set a test. Park Yun-hee was given the task of making one Torani feel genuine emotion. If she succeeded, your species would be spared. If she failed, you would be judged unworthy, as all others have been judged before you." He paused. The silence stretched. "The 3 days have passed. Observer Mira has returned to our delegation, and I have seen no evidence that she has felt anything." Yunhee felt the words like physical blows. No evidence. 3 days of work, 3 days of connection, and it was not enough. Kale stepped forward. "The test has failed. I recommend we proceed with judgment immediately." "Wait." The voice came from Yunhee. She had not planned to speak. The word came out of her before she could stop it. Every eye turned to her. Velik's gaze was heavy and cold. "You wish to speak?" he said. "Yes." Her voice was steady, even though her heart was racing. "Before you deliver your judgment, I ask permission to say goodbye to Mira." A murmur ran through the Torani delegation. Kale's face twisted with contempt. "This is absurd," he said. "The human is trying to manipulate us again. She wants one more chance to contaminate our observer." "I want to say goodbye," Yunhee said. "That is all. Whether you destroy us or not, I want her to know that the time I spent with her mattered to me. Is that not allowed?" Velik studied her. His ancient eyes seemed to see through her skin, into her heart, into her soul. She did not look away. "Very well," he said. "You may approach." Kale started to protest, but Velik silenced him with a look. Yunhee walked toward the Torani platform, her footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. She climbed the steps and stopped in front of Mira. The young Torani did not look up. "Mira," Yunhee said softly. Mira's hands tightened in her lap, but she did not respond. Yunhee knelt down so she was at Mira's eye level. She did not care that the entire chamber was watching. She did not care that Velik and Kyle were judging her every word. She only cared about Mira. "I know you are afraid," Yunhee said. "I know everything inside you is telling you to close off, to go back to being empty, to be what the Torani expect you to be. I understand that." She reached out and placed her hand on Mira's clasped hands. "But I want you to know something," Yunhee continued. "These 3 days, talking with you, listening to you, showing you music and stories and the things that make humans who we are, they mattered to me. You matter to me. Not because you might save humanity. Not because of the test, because you are you. Because I saw something in you that is good and true and worth knowing. Mira's shoulders trembled slightly. I am glad I met you, Yunhee said. Whatever happens now, I am glad. She squeezed Mira's hands gently and stood up to leave. And then Mira looked up. Her face was broken open. The stone mask had cracked, and beneath it was something raw and terrible and beautiful. Her eyes were wet, her lips were trembling. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps. She started, and her voice broke. The chamber went still. I do not want you to die, Mira whispered. Her voice was thick, choked with something she did not know how to name. I do not want any of you to die. When I think about Valak destroying your world, your oceans and mountains and forests and all those billions of people who feel and love, something inside me breaks. Something hurts. I do not know what it is, but I cannot make it stop. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Actual tears, liquid that the Tarani had not produced for 10,000 years. They ran down her stone-smooth skin and dripped onto her clasped hands. I feel, she said. I do not understand it. I do not know how to control it. But I feel. The chamber erupted. Humans gasped and cried out. The Tarani delegation rose to their feet, their expressions shifting from shock to confusion to something that might have been fear. Kael stepped forward, his face dark with rage. This is impossible, he said. This is contamination. This is not genuine emotion. It is human weakness forced into a Tarani mind. Silence. Velik's voice cut through the noise. Everyone stopped. The ancient ambassador walked slowly across the platform to where Mira stood. He looked down at her tears, at her trembling hands, at the raw pain written across her face. He reached out and touched her cheek, wiping away a tear. He looked at it for a long moment, then he raised his eyes to Yunhee. Dae-sun stood at the back of the chamber, his heart pounding. He watched Yunhee standing before the Tarani, small and fragile and utterly unafraid. He watched what she had done, what she had awakened, the impossible thing she had achieved. And he thought, the most magnificent woman I have ever seen. He did not realize he had spoken aloud until the person next to him looked at him, but it did not matter. It was true. Valak was still looking at Yunhee. His expression was unreadable. You were right, he said quietly. About what? Yunhee asked. About all of it. He looked back at Mira, at her tear-streaked face. We have been searching for 10,000 years. We have destroyed everyone who reminded us of what we lost. And all that time, we thought we were looking for something to conquer, something to judge, but we were wrong. He turned to face the full assembly, Tarani and human alike. We were looking for someone to heal us. The chamber was absolutely silent. This human, Valak said, has done what 10,000 years of searching could not do. She has made a Tarani feel. He turned to Yunhee. The test is passed. Humanity is spared. The humans erupted in cheers, in tears, in embraces. The weight of extinction lifted from their shoulders, and they wept with relief. But Valak was not finished. More than spared, he said. The chamber quieted. Humanity will be under Tarani protection from this day forward. Any species that threatens you will answer to us. He looked at Yunhee with something that might have been respect, or something deeper. You have given us a gift we do not deserve. We will try to be worthy of it. Yunhee bowed her head. Thank you, Ambassador. Valak nodded. Then he turned and walked away. And Mira stayed. The Tarani fleet remained in orbit around the station, but the cold tension that had gripped everyone began to fade. Ambassador Valak met with Commander Kim to establish the terms of protection. High Emissary Kael retreated into silence, his objections overruled by his own leader. And Mira stayed. She asked Velik for permission to remain with the humans as a permanent liaison. She wanted to learn more about emotion, how to understand it, how to control it, how to live with it. She wanted to feel more. Velik agreed without argument. Perhaps he understood that she was the beginning of something that might eventually heal all the Tarani. Or perhaps he simply saw that she belonged here now, in a way she had never belonged with her own people. On the third day after the judgment, Day-Sun found Yun-Hee in the observation lounge. She was standing at the window looking out at Earth. The planet turned slowly below them, blue and green and white, beautiful and alive. She looked tired, but peaceful. "You saved us," he said. She turned to face him. "We saved us. It was not just me. It was you." He stepped closer. "I watched you, Yun-Hee. I watched you stand before Velik and tell him his entire species was in pain. I watched you spend 3 days giving everything you had to reach Mira. I watched you say goodbye to her knowing you might die in the next hour." He paused. "I have never seen anything like it." She smiled slightly. "I was terrified the entire time. That makes it even more impressive." She looked at him, really looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time. "You stood up for me," she said. "In the judgment chamber, when Kale wanted to execute me. You stepped forward. You were willing to die." "Yes." "Why?" Day-Sun considered the question. He had asked himself the same thing many times over the past few days. Why had he done it? Why had he risked his life for her? "Because what you represent is worth dying for," he said. "Compassion, connection, the belief that understanding is more powerful than strength. Those things are what make humanity worth saving. And you—" He stopped, searching for the right words. "You are those things. You are the best of us." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I do not feel like the best of anything. I feel like someone who got lucky. It was not luck. It was you. Who you are. What you believe." He stepped closer. "In the judgment chamber, when you were saying goodbye to Mira, I said something." "What?" "I said you were the most magnificent woman I had ever seen." She blinked. Color rose in her cheeks. "You said that?" "I did not mean to say it aloud, but I meant it." She looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. The tiredness faded. The distance closed. "You are a good man, Kang Day-Sun," she said. "I am glad you were with me through this." "I will continue to be with you," he said. "If you will let me." She smiled. A real smile, warm and open. "I will let you." They stood together at the window, looking out at the stars. That evening, Yun-Hee went to find Mira. The young Tarani was in the observation corridor where they had first met, standing before the nebula. She turned when she heard Yun-Hee approach. "I was hoping you would come," Mira said. "How are you feeling?" Mira considered the question. "Strange. Everything is strange. I feel things I do not have names for. I feel sadness when I think about going back to the Tarani. I feel happiness when I talk to you. I feel fear about the future, and hope at the same time. Is that normal?" "Yes," Yun-Hee said. "That is completely normal." "How do you manage it? Feeling so many things at once?" Yun-Hee came to stand beside her. "You learn to hold them. You do not try to control them or push them away. You just let them exist, and you keep going." Mira nodded slowly. "I have much to learn. You have time, and I will help you." Mira looked at her. "Why? Your test is over. Your people are safe. You do not need me anymore." Yun-Hee reached out and took Mira's hand. "I do not help you because I need you. I help you because I care about you. That is what compassion means. That is what friendship means." Mira's eyes grew wet again. She was still not used to tears. They surprised her every time they came. I do not understand friendship, she said, but I think I would like to. Then stay, Yunhee said. Stay and learn. We will figure it out together. Mira nodded. The tears spilled down her cheeks, and she did not try to stop them. They stood together at the window, watching the nebula burn in the distance. Weeks passed. The Tarani fleet departed, but Mira remained. She became a fixture on the station, learning about human customs, human emotions, human ways of being. She cried often, sometimes from sadness, sometimes from joy, sometimes from things she could not name. She laughed for the first time, a strange, broken sound that startled everyone who heard it, including herself. She made friends. Not just Yunhee, but others. Yunbi, who showed her human music and taught her to dance. Jaewon, who talked to her about loyalty and protection. Kim, who shared his burdens of leadership. She became part of the station, part of the crew, part of humanity in a way that no Tarani had ever been. And slowly, news came from the Tarani homeworld. Other Tarani were asking questions. They had heard about Mira. They wanted to know what she had found. They wanted to know if it was possible for them too. The healing had begun. Daesun stood in the observation lounge on a quiet evening, watching the stars. Yunhee came to stand beside him, her shoulder brushing against his. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About what comes next," he said. "The Tarani are changing because of what you did. Other species will notice. The galaxy is going to be different now." "Is that a good thing?" "I think so." He looked at her. "A universe with more compassion is a better universe." She smiled. "Listen to you. Speaking like a diplomat. I learned from the best." She leaned against him, and he put his arm around her. They stood together, looking out at the endless dark. "Yunhee," he said. "Yes?" "When this started, I thought humanity would be judged by our strength, our technology, our achievements. I thought those were the things that mattered. And now? Now I know better." He turned to face her. "We were saved by kindness. By the willingness to see pain in another being and respond with care. That is what makes us worthy. Not power, not intelligence. Compassion." She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "That," he said, "is what I saw in you, from the very beginning, and that is why I said what I said in the judgment chamber." "What did you say again?" she asked, a teasing smile on her lips. He smiled back. "The most magnificent woman I have ever seen." She rose up on her toes and kissed him. And out in the void, among the countless stars and the ancient species and the infinite possibilities of the universe, something new was growing. Something that started with one woman who chose to see the pain in an enemy and respond with love. Something magnificent.